Welcome to Old Guy Tech,
the OGT.TV recording studio.
Technology for the rest of us.
Hi, I'm Rob Charny, and this is Crime Beat for El Dorado County, California, and I'm here today with my good friend Sheriff John DeAugustini of El Dorado County, and we're going to do the 2018 wrap-up. I kind of goofed on that one, didn't I? So, that's right. So we're going to do the 2018 wrap-up about all things EDSO, and I went back and I looked at some of our other shows and some of the things that we did and some of the things we talked about. But one of the first topics I really wanted to bring up is the unfortunate fire that happened to the poor folks up in Paradise and the folks down south in the Malibu area and all the ongoing problems. And I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about a couple of the things that are happening. PG&E with their power outage situations, how EDSO is prepared to respond to such emergencies and that kind of things, and how you feel about the way things are being handled here in El Dorado County on that issue.
Oh, how I feel?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. This is.
Well, we had our public safety power outage here in El Dorado County a month or so ago now, and it was not handled very well by PG&E. They've admitted a lot of it, but our biggest issue from our sheriff's office, because we are OES for the county,
exactly,
was notification.
Right.
And, I've heard, and I'm sure most of you folks know, and we know some folks got 15 emails or telephone calls from PG&E, some of which were confusing, some of which you understood what was going on, and some didn't get any. My wife and I were driving back from a camping trip, and she received, I think, 6 phone calls on her phone, and I didn't receive one. Did
you put your number in the system?
Our OES division was never notified directly.
Really?
Nope. We were notified by Cal OES. The city of Placerville was never notified directly. And when the plan first came up for the public safety power outages, we asked for the GIS grid information, the mapping information for each of their circuits, so that when they had one come up, when they finally pulled the pin and had a public safety power outage, we could, with our public notification systems, have accurate, concise information given out to those folks in the areas that were affected.
Well, not only that, that tells you what grids are out, and you know what areas.
We know exactly
what areas.
Exactly.
Right.
So our plan was to get that information, have everything pre-programmed in our system, which is Code Red, which we can also up that with some other systems, and get real good information out to everybody. First, we were told that we can't have that information because it was a matter of national security. That didn't fly very well.
Okay.
We're the sheriff's office.
That's right. It's not like me calling up and saying, hey, can I have that? Right.
So then finally they did have a meeting, a public outreach meeting here at the fairgrounds, a month or so prior to the outage. And I stood up and said, hey, when can we expect this mapping information?
Right.
And they apologized and said, you will have it within a week. Well, even to the day of the outage, we still had not received it. And to this day, we still have not received it. We've received some information, but according to my staff, to use a very technical term, it's junk.
Yeah.
It's not, it's very vague that the mapping coordinates don't carry over accurately. So, but they're working with us finally on it. So, what will happen in the future when we have another one of these? Hopefully, we will have this mapping issue sorted out. We will be able to hit the buttons and put out Code Red. If I've mentioned Code Red here on the show before. If you are not signed up for Code Red,
sign up.
Please sign up.
Yep.
If you are not, you will still get a notification if you have a landline.
Right.
If you don't have a landline, you need to sign up with Code Red with your cell service, your email, texting, and all of that. If it's a significant issue, such as, or we have a major wildland fire like in Paradise or Magalia, or Butte County, I should say, or like we had here with the King Fire.
Right.
We can up those notifications to include the National Emergency Notification System. I think that's what it's called.
I believe you're right.
And some of us have received those before on our cell phones. They just go off.
Right.
Those are based on geographic locations of the cell towers.
Right.
So you're going to get a notification if you're in that area.
Okay.
And then also with Code Red, even if you're at work in Sacramento, you're not in the area, if you're signed up with Code Red, you'll get it on your cell phone. That way you can get emails through Code Red, you can get text. So,
right.
Again, people need to, we really need as many folks as possible, everybody to sign up for our Code Red. And you can do that by going to the main screen, just Google El Dorado County Sheriff's Office. When that comes up, down on the left, there will be a link for emergency notifications to sign up to go into Code Red.
Right.
Some folks have a little bit of difficulty getting the location right of your residence. It's pretty intuitive. If you are having difficulty, there is a number there that you can call and we'll walk you through it.
Good. Yeah, we did it. My wife and I did it, and I had make sure my kids all did it as well. It's very easy. It's a simple sign up. There has been some discussion on Code Red about when people change their phone numbers or the phone numbers fall off. And so if you should change your phone number or something, make sure that you go back into Code Red and update that, because if the number isn't good anymore, it doesn't do you any good.
Or you're adding lines. If you have kids and they're coming of age where they're getting a cell phone and you want them to be able to get it, go in and update it and add their phone.
I believe when I did it, you could put in as many phone numbers as you want, I believe. So, we made sure, of course, that our cell phones were all in it, and we still have a landline, so we're good with that. My question on PG&E was, when they did this outage, and of course, like you said, it surprised everybody what it was. For some reason, and this is very interesting, is I wanted to know how they chose which grids to turn off and not, because believe it or not, we didn't go down. But the neighbors across the street, they did. So I was told by supposedly somebody in the know, one of the things that PG&E, one of the problems they have is if you're on a grid with a hospital, you fall into that grid line where the hospital is, those are not supposed to go down. Now, I didn't find out if Marshall actually lost power or not.
I don't believe they did.
I didn't think they did.
But even with that, it's not just so much a hospital. It's just the how the grids are set up.
Yeah.
We live in a rural area,
right?
And if you've noticed, and if you've looked at the high tension lines or the power lines, the power feeds, not the user, not the consumer side after the transformer, but the actual high voltage ones, they go everywhere.
Right.
And because of that, PG&E doesn't have the ability to say, well, we just want to shut just this area off. They may not have that ability because this area also jumps over and goes around and the lines feed that area.
Right.
And come, whatever. So that was the confusion of, well, how come I lost power? They didn't. Or in Placerville, north of the freeway was off, or south was on, or vice versa. Some lights worked, some lights didn't.
Right.
That's because of that infrastructure that they have. Now, part of this that they've learned is they need to go back in, and they're going to start going back in and changing, not so much changing the circuits, but putting in more areas where they can shut off circuits and leave other circuits on and double back and whatnot.
Right.
So
right.
They're looking at re-engineering. And most importantly, they're looking at hardening their system. Some of the viewers can agree or disagree, and that's fine. But when PG&E or their contract line clears come out, we still get a lot of calls, and I know people that have said, "Get the hell off my property! I don't want you out here. You're messing up my property. You're messing up my trees or whatever." Well, they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
And let them clear the lines. But they're also going to go in. All of our high voltage lines eventually will be replaced with coated lines, so that even if something lands on them or they slap, they won't cause an arc, and cause a spark. And that's going to take 20 years though before they can get all that done.
Isn't it interesting? It only took them 100 years to figure that's a problem.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, PG&E, but come on.
You look at our area and where we live, and the trees are. We live in the country. We live in a rural area, and some of it we've caused ourselves. And I've talked to a couple board members about this. We have this oak woodland ordinance or whatever it is, where you can't cut a tree so big.
Right.
You have to get a permit and all. And live oaks. Live oak is a weed. Live oak is a weed.
We call them scrub oaks, right?
Yeah. Scrub oaks, live oaks, whatever.
It's junk oak. Yeah.
They're just a good firewood.
Absolutely.
But we need to let them clear your lunch.
So what was interesting about this issue also, as I was keeping track with people, is some people got it returned the day after. Some people went out as far as 4 days before power was returned. And I know PG&E has a lot of issues about that. There are substations around in a lot of different areas, and to the residential areas and things like that. It's really strange how this outage works.
Well, that's one thing. When they turn it off, then before they can turn it on, they have to go physically check every line to make sure that it's safe to turn it back on. We're used to, in the wintertime, frequently our power goes out, right?
Right.
It just, a tree falls across it, or a vehicle accident, maybe somebody hits a power pole, whatnot, and our power goes out. Yep. Well, the only thing they have to do is fix what caused that power outage, and that line goes back on, and they're good. But in this instance, they have to physically check every line.
So I didn't know that
was off before they can turn it back on.
Oh boy!
That's why we had a lot of helicopters flying over.
Right.
A lot of linemen out checking all the lines. Right. Yeah.
Well, so with that said, one of the things I want our viewers to know also, if you've not been paying attention to your insurance people, one of the things that I'm being told, of course, is that many people are losing their fire insurance. They're finding that defensible space is becoming more and more of an issue with the insurance companies as well. They're doing a lot of inspections, and if you don't fall into compliance, you could very well lose your fire insurance. So one of the things about the tree trimming companies at PG&E, when they're coming out, in some respects, folks, that's free service to you. Take advantage of it, because they need to get those things down. But the other thing that's going to happen is be aware that I'm being told through the National Insurance Association that quite likely those of us that live rural in the areas that where the fires will burn, will more than likely see our fire insurance rates double coming in 2019, 2020. So be aware of that as well. And I may be as guilty as some. There's some areas that I love those trees. They get the shade where I want it, but if your insurance company comes around and says you got to clear, you got to clear. I mean, that's just the way it works. So be aware of that as well. Thank God we got our rains, and we're able to do some more work and stuff because it came. We were very lucky. I know I was, and I'm sure you were. We were all holding our breath, hoping the hell that it didn't happen here.
I mean, we were one spark away from the same type of incident here in El Dorado County.
Yeah, we were so lucky. So we're fortunate enough. We probably beat that horse to death on this situation. We kind of talked about the power outage with OES as well as far as the sheriff's department goes as well. Why don't we jump into one of the new exciting things that's happened is let's talk about facilities. How's the new facility coming, and how's all that going on?
It's going fantastic.
Right.
We're still on time and under budget.
That's it. Yep. Okay.
That's the main thing.
That's the catchphrase. On time, under budget.
Yep. If you haven't been by there in a while, please drive by and check it out on Industrial Drive off of Missouri Flat.
Can't miss it.
The walls on the main building are up. The walls on the morgue are up. The evidence building is poured. The slab is there. Steel will hopefully in another week or two. Steel will be delivered for that. They're doing structural steel in the main building as we speak. Today's December 3rd, I guess it is. Mm-hmm. So that's happening. After that's stood and all the decking's on for that, then they'll stand the structural steel in the morgue. But it's other than a little bit of a muddy mess right now in some areas on the site, it's going very, very smooth. We had a significant meeting, about a month ago now, on moving. gotta have meetings for everything. Right?
Sure,
On the
right.
project. You gotta have
Right.
meetings. So the meeting was about moving into the new building and the logistics for making that all happen between the different divisions. And one of the things that we had to come up with was the date.
Right.
What date do we flip the sign on the old building and say public now goes to the new building?
Okay.
And that date is August 1st of 2019.
Really?
So the new building, all core functions, patrol, records, support services, investigations, everything that runs the agency will be open for business, scheduled right now, August 1st of 2019.
Wow.
The rest of the project, the special ops building and the range, and then the total closeout and commission will be right around the first week of November of 2019.
Excellent.
So, yeah, we're excited.
That's exciting.
It's big. It's a big deal. The building is big. Everything looks massive. But when I was standing out the other day, about a week ago, looking at the footprint of everything, and I started in my mind putting in the footprint of patrol, and then operations where we are now, and then evidence, and then going down to the investigations building over on Pierre Ross Road and thinking, okay, what do they have? Right. And then anyway, I started placing everything in my mind, and it's just moving everybody together.
Yeah.
With some expansion room. But it's impressive.
That'd be cool. That'd be really nice. Yeah, and it's going to be so good to have everybody in basically the same campus now. It's going to be a big issue.
Efficiency is going to be huge.
Yeah, and even for the public, it's going to be so much better for them as well, because there's a lot of confusion as where you go to do what, where, when, how, type of thing. So yeah, I think everybody should really look forward to this. This is well overdue. So good job, because we were holding our breath on this 2019, 2020 we were talking. So they're moving along.
Like I said, my goal is on time, under budget. We've had change orders. As in any big job, you're going to have some change orders.
Yep.
But nearly all of the most of the change orders we've had have actually been cost saving.
Oh, good.
Looking at new ways of doing things, or we can do this way instead of that way, or we're on time and under budget.
That's great. That's great. Well, it's good to have. We're all excited about that and how that's going to go. So between August and November 2019, everything's going to be over there.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yay for that. That's a great deal. So throughout 2018, we talked on and off about the jail and the mandates that were made by the state of California again and everything. And I thought, well, let's just readdress this. How are we doing? How's the jail situation going? Are we still taking rentals?
Yep.
Okay.
So
all right.
We got 10 as of this morning. We have 10 outside agency beds that we're selling. We're renting.
Right.
I think we're still at $92 a day for those outside agencies.
Which seems amazingly cheap, to be honest with you. It just amazes me that you can do it.
Yeah, it's kind of a economics issue too, trying to come up with a number. Other agencies are now starting offering beds, so we've kept ours fairly reasonable.
Got it.
For rental costs. We are, as of this morning, we had 85 open beds.
Wow.
So we're still doing good in that regard. We've hit pretty close to, we've had this conversation before, but our total capacity is 469. 311 beds in Placerville, 158 in Tahoe. But just because we have those 469 beds doesn't mean that we can house 469 inmates. Why does that? Why do I say that? Because of an issue called classification,
right?
Where I can't house Knucklehead A with Knucklehead B because they're going to kill one another. Right. So we can literally be busting at the seams based on classification. Instead of 469, we can be busting at the seams at 430 or 420. Sure. So to have 85 beds gives us that flexibility. We did come close a couple times. Where we were getting ready to start having the conversation for cap releases, but we never got there. We did institute on our female side is where we really are running up against the wall frequently on capacity.
Right.
So we instituted another program where through credits, you're attending classes you're supposed to attend, the programming you're supposed to attend, you're volunteering for different things that they can volunteer for in the jail inmate, and whatever, and they can build up credits. So we've actually had 2 that have obtained enough credits that when it came time and things were starting to look touchy, that we're able to get out a week earlier, or a few days earlier than they would have.
Right.
But that's just been on the female side. Now I think we talked a while ago about SB 844, which was that another round of money from the state that the board approved for a jail expansion, not so for new beds, not for increased capacity, but for what we're calling new beds. So keeps us ahead of the ACLU and the prison law office on lawsuits as far as mental health treatment, programming, education, other opportunities that they have. And even though we don't have a net increase, it will also soften up our issue with female capacity. So that is still moving forward. It was accepted by the state just a couple of weeks ago, our application. So we're moving forward with that. That was a $25 million grant from the state, which the match can all be in lieu of. So we're doing it with our labor, the land, things like that. So really we can get $25 million of bed or of jail expansion for not one cost to our general fund. It's still taxpayer dollars. It's in the state's coffers. But we're coming in that way. So we're doing good.
Sounds like actually since the last time we talked, things have actually improved. Again, one of the things to all our listeners out there is that you got to understand the way the dynamics of the jail works. And John said, it's knucklehead A and knucklehead B, whatever you want to say. Between race, religion, gang affiliation, whatever it may be, they have to make a determination who can be basically in general pop with whom. And so it's a difficult job that they have, going through screening, making sure everything's right as well. And hence that's why you may have X amount of beds, but you can only do so much to segregate the groups. And that's unfortunately, that's becoming life, not only in California, everywhere, where it's getting more and more difficult.
It is, and things that we have seen that's on the negative side in our jail is assaults on inmates, inmate on inmate assaults. It seems those are up. And even worse than that is assaults on staff. Those are up. We have a more, we're sitting on a more sophisticated level of inmate. A lot of them have spent time in prison already and are now, instead of spending time in prison due to realignment, they're spending time in county jail.
Which is like going to the Hilton.
So there are games that they could get away with in prison and we're used to playing in prison. Now they're playing those same games in our county jails. They're trying to bring in all their drugs, their cell phones. It's a constant battle. It is. I'm afraid. I'm pretty sure this will come to fruition, especially in lieu of last November's election and who we have for a new governor, and seeing some of the seats that were turned over in the state that had traditionally been some conservative strongholds flipped. So we're going to even have more in the state.
More regulations.
More going the wrong way. The same way that we've been going the last 4 years. So I'm not encouraged at all.
And I'm not far behind you on that as well. I'd say an awful lot of things, but that's a discussion for another day on a lot of the areas. But at least on the jail situation, so far, it sounds like you're doing good. Pretty much, this is better news than the last time, so things are improving, and that's good to know. So it takes care of the jail situation. Let's talk about really quickly as far as the budget and staffing levels. Now, that was one of the big topics for 2018. How are we doing? How are things looking now?
So we're looking better than we were. Talking on the show before, we talked about when was the time going to be when we were going to ask for staffing.
Right.
It was no secret. I was very leery to ask for staffing while this new headquarters project was moving forward, because I didn't want to sidetrack the board. I wanted to keep them focused and get to a point where we were past the point of no return before I started having those conversations. Well, I think we're there. So prior to the discussions, this year's budget, we were, and you've heard this before, we were at 2003 staffing levels.
Right.
We have been at 2003 staffing levels since I've been your sheriff, since 2011. Right in the downturn, the economic downturn and the crash, we took huge hits right off the bat. So I inherited that. I came in right at the end of all those cuts. Right when I did come in, we write 24 positions right off the bat. The board did on our allocations. So we were 373 FTEs, or full-time employees, in our agency. So we started having those discussions, started putting it forth the ask that we needed bodies. We're doing staffing studies. Quite honestly, staffing studies are like any other study. I can make it look any way I want just by changing a few matrix in there.
Right.
Most importantly is unallocated time, or that time that I want our deputies to be able to spend in the community. They're not writing reports. They're not booking somebody. They're not doing an investigation. It's free time where they can be doing active patrol, proactive patrol, looking for knuckleheads, meeting, the employees behind the counters in our local businesses, meeting our residents, getting out of their cars, like what I want.
Right.
Well, if I just bump that just by a few percentage points, that gives us so many more deputies in the staffing study. It shows that we need.
Right.
So we're in the process right now of trying to do a more objective type of staffing study as to what truly, what do we really need? Where are we now? Do we need more and whatnot? Knowing that the county has grown 14% since 2003, calls for service have increased the same 14%. We know we need more deputies. Our folks are working really, really hard. So I started the ask. Meeting with the CAO, I asked for 4 deputies and 4 sheriff's techs. The CAO said he could support the 4 deputies, but could not support the 4 techs for reasons, budgetary reasons, that I obviously disagreed with. This budget process was a little different. Every year is a little different. We were asked to, again, provide a status quo budget, with statutory increases included, which we did provide. Then right at the last minute, the CAO came back to us and said they needed assistance in closing a $600,000 gap. So we said, okay. So we revisited our fixed asset list, which we had already cut $1.2 million off internally.
Right.
So we were at $1.9 million, and we agreed in a meeting to reducing that $600,000 down to 1.3, not by reducing anything or cutting anything off the list, but just by removing all the costs and taking the total from 1.9 to 1.3. That gave us the flexibility in the office, in the sheriff's office, to prioritize what things we needed. And even then, we all know when you're building a budget, you're using fair market value for things. You're just putting the budget together. But when it comes time to actually negotiate cost on a one bid or for assets, you may be able to get a $500,000 item for $300,000. So you're saving money. So that's how we agreed to go from 1.9 to 1.6, of which one supervisor didn't agree with because they needed to know what exactly each item cost so that they could have control over that. And they were very eloquently corrected by county council that that's not how it works with an independent elected officer to the sheriff compared to other department heads, but we got past that. So, because I wasn't, and the budget was different also in delivery to the board, department heads didn't give their presentations this year. We were asked to submit our presentations or any thing that we disagreed with in writing. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a 3-page letter, not only why I believed I needed the 4 deputies, but also why I needed the 4 sheriff's techs, the support staff to keep those deputies working on the road. And then we had a couple issues because of our sheriff, and especially in regards to the sheriff's tech classification. As most of our viewers, your viewers know, our CCWs were extremely backed up. Yeah. When I came into office, we had 748 CCWs in the county in 2011. We're probably pushing close to 6,000 now. We were just extremely backed up. Then we also had 2 instances that I'm not proud of, but it was just due to workload. One was a warrant that was a little bit late getting entered into the system, and unfortunately that suspect made it across the Mexican border prior to the warrant being entered. So that was an oops that should have never happened. But I don't blame any of the staff. It was in the stack. It was just the workload that they have with the staff that we have. And then another issue was a juvenile that was getting ready to board a cruise ship to go on vacation in the Caribbean with his family. And I didn't know this, but apparently when you swipe your passport, that ties into NCIC, and a conviction that this juvenile had that was expunged had not got expunged in a timely fashion. And it popped up, and he was unable to board the cruise ship.
Oh, my.
So, again, those were, I don't blame any staff. Those were just issues that, because of staffing level. So I brought all that up in the letter to the board, our need and why I disagreed with the CAO. So when the CAO went in and gave the presentation to the board for the budget, went through everything, gave his presentation. When they got to Law and Justice, talked about the sheriff's budget, talked how he supported adding 4 deputy sheriffs, but could not support the 4 sheriff's techs. And then when he was done presenting, the board started talking about our hot unit, which we're going to talk here shortly, and about how all the great work that they're doing and all the that they're doing for the community, and they've reduced the calls for service, and they've housed so many homeless, and oh, they're so fantastic. We want to thank the sheriff's office so much for that. And then they turn around and pass the budget without the 4 sheriff's techs. So some folks, mostly from government, have accused me of being petty or playing games. But that was, I believe, like at 3:30 in the afternoon. And at 4:30 in the afternoon, they received an email from me personally, stating that due to the reasons stated in the letter and the need for the techs, I had no other option than to pull the hot unit, disband the hot unit as of July 1st, and they will be assigned to records to help get caught up on the backlog of issues that I described in the letter.
Is that a lead balloon?
Yeah, that started... you're being petty. That's childish. You can't play those kind of games. I said, these aren't games, and I'm not bluffing. This is real. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to be paying deputy sheriff salaries for doing record tech work. That's what you forced me to do. That was Tuesday. Thursday, I had an emergency meeting with one of the board members, John Heidel from District 1. Asked me what the board could do to keep the hot unit, and I said, I told you what you can do to keep the hot unit. It was in a 3-page letter I wrote, which I don't believe they read. I truly believe they didn't even read it. So he went back and was able to get in a timely fashion the budget or the agenda amended for proper notice. And that next Tuesday, they approved my 4 sheriff's techs.
Wow.
So that's how we are able to, right now, we're caught up on all renewals, CCW renewals.
Right.
They are caught up as of now.
Yay.
The direction was after that, once we were knew we were going to be able to hire techs, the direction was we will be caught up by Christmas. So again, renewals are caught up and new applications are almost there. So
now we're accepting new applications for CCWs now? Because for a while we stopped.
No, I believe we're accepting new applications, and we're almost totally caught up, and we'll be able to catch up with those by Christmas.
Excellent. That's good news. For all my students out there, that's great news for you guys too.
So the budget, we're okay now. Where we are going next year, I'm not sure on asks. Again, we need to have this more objective staffing study completed and see where we are and where we want to be. The highest that we were was just before the crash, and we were, I believe, like 426. I'm not saying we need to get there. I'm not saying I need that many staff. As everybody knows, I'm very fiscally conservative. But to be staffed at 2003 levels, now just 8 over that, we need to take a really close look at where we are and what we need to provide that highest level of service we can.
I think it's really easy for the public and maybe even the board to forget that background staff, that tech staffing level that you need, without that support, everything kind of grinds slowly, shall we say. Not to a halt, but grinds slowly.
Absolutely.
Because they can only work so many hours a day and they can only get so much done.
That's
so
right.
It's easy to forget the backside of things.
And I of course, I'm a little biased. I'm the sheriff, so I'm gonna say this. I believe public safety is the number one priority for local government. That's number one. And actually, when the county went through the process of putting together a strategic plan, public safety was number one, and they made that a priority. Well, I want to see, and I'm not being I'm very appreciative of what the board has given us in this new facility. I'm very appreciative of that, and I'm not trying to look a gift horse in the mouth or anything, but the board really needs to, I think, walk their talk and put public safety first.
Yeah,
if we're standing up and we're saying, "Hey, these are the reasons. This is what we need, and these are the reasons why," we need to take a close look at that and not blow it off. That's my opinion.
It's going to be interesting with the change on the board coming up to see if that actually improves or gets worse.
We will see.
Yeah,
we will see.
We will see.
And I think this next year will be very key to that because, again, after this study's done and we see where we need to go, where I would really like to go, and I've had this conversation with the CAO, what would be the healthiest for the county and the healthiest for the agency and the healthiest for the communities is if we had a clear goal of where we needed to be and the county would come up with a plan on getting us there. Meaning, okay, the studies show and everything says that we need 13 more deputies, 6 more techs, 12 more correctional officers, and so forth and so on. Now, we know we can't get those all right now. I completely understand that. But the board is going to commit to so much per year for the next 6 years, 5 years, 8 years, or whatever, and comes up with a plan and sticks with it to get there. That's healthy. That's good budgeting. That's good planning. Unfortunately, the way that the board is budgeting now and the priorities that they have set, there is no way to get to that plan. It's not on the table right now.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to be working on.
So I'm a big believer with government. Having sat on a number of boards in El Dorado County, myself, is to make sure that if you're on the board, that you educate yourself in the issues and exactly what goes along with it. And unfortunately, we've had people elected to board, supervisors in particular, that believe that they get a mandate by being elected, and then they can walk their agenda through. And this is an agenda neutral area as far as I'm concerned. This is public safety, and politics really has no place involved with this.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
That's my opinion, and and that's the way I conducted myself, and I think it's important. So hopefully, as 2019 rolls around, we're around the corner for it. In 2020, we can see some common sense of what's going on with the budget and what's going on with your office and the others as well. I mean, it's a big picture that they have to look at, and I understand it as well. But I think public safety is the number one issue, I think, for every community. And we can see it by not only crime rates, that's another thing that we're going to talk about, but in the emergency services area, which is so important as well. People forget how important the sheriff's department plays in it. Everybody thinks it's firefighters. Well, you've got to not forget the rest of that goes along with emergency services as well.
Right.
And that's a big part of it.
That's right. And I'll give all that equal playing field as well.
Sure.
But it affects everything that the county is.
Right.
If people don't feel safe, if they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to move here.
Right.
They're not going to live here. They're not going to buy here. They're not going to shop here. They're not going to send their kids to school here. Everything, the bottom, again, I know I'm biased, but everything starts with public safety.
Right. To me, it's common sense, but, you have to think about it, and it has to be brought up. And so part of why we do this show is to educate people, educate myself. Even the sheriff learns things when we talk about stuff, and I think that's really important. I think it's a great way for our listeners and the people that live in El Dorado County to understand how it's all involved and how it all works and integrates together. So that rolls into a little bit about our crime rate, and let's talk about we're looking at numbers in 2017. We're coming to the end of 2018 here. How are we doing on the numbers, and how does it look as far as El Dorado County goes?
We're still flat. Yeah. We're not seeing those big increases that I sat here and said we would see.
Right.
We're very blessed in those regards. I knock on wood every time I say it because I'm just waiting for the spikes. Now, do we have pockets of crime? Absolutely.
Yes.
If we didn't have crime, we wouldn't need us.
Right.
But we're not seeing huge increases. You look at our annual report over the last, since I've been sheriff, and we've been putting out an annual report. You see little bumps here and there, and we saw one year a huge increase in rapes. But that wasn't a huge increase in actual rapes. It was due to a change in legislation on how rapes are reported. So everything's just kind of been floating around the same. We're seeing a little bit of increases every year due to population, due to calls for service, but it's all per capita. It's everything's pretty much staying the same. And again, I don't want to say I'm holding my breath because I'd be passed out by now.
Yeah.
But we're just very, very blessed in El Dorado County. Part of it, I believe, is we have a really good community with the whole see something, say something. Everybody, for the most part, supports law enforcement and is not afraid to call, is not afraid to make those calls, no matter how insignificant they think it is. And I reach out to everybody that's watching this too. If you see something you think it's insignificant, well, call us and let us know. Maybe it is, but it also might be just that one little last piece of a puzzle that we need to solve something bigger. But yeah, we're blessed.
So we're really lucky. One of the things that you touched on it is that some of the pockets of whatever crime you're looking at have changed a little bit. I use my own area. We're in a very exclusive area here in Diamond Springs, and one of the things that's happened in the last couple of years is we've seen a big jump in mail problems where people are coming in and stealing mail, and it's become such an issue that our community has gotten together here and basically none of us can leave mail in mailboxes anymore. You drop your letters in there. If you don't go and pick up your mail right away when it's dropped off, it's being stolen. We've seen a big spike in our area, and I know you're aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we see that mail theft goes in clusters.
Yeah,
it'll be one area, North County or South County or here Central or down in the West Slope or maybe even the Basin. But overall, throughout the county, everything is just kind of the numbers, the actual numbers.
Yeah.
And that goes to, I think, one of the things that we did, and it's on the list to talk about down a ways, is directed patrol. That was one thing that we changed a while ago. And I think it was on here in the show. I called it a duh moment.
What did we think about this before?
Why are we doing this?
Right.
So what directed patrol is traditional law enforcement allocations for patrol. You have a beat system. Now you constantly are reviewing and evaluating your beats, your geographic areas where a deputy is assigned.
Right.
But we all know, and the way with that system, with the beat system, is briefing. You hold your briefing, and you have 12 deputies there, and you say, okay, you're working in this beat, and you're working in that beat, and you're working in that beat, and you're working, and you spread them out in their beat. Well, we know that crime occurs in clusters.
Right.
So you'll have an area here that's getting hit with burglaries. And you have an area over here that's getting hit with mail thefts. And you have an area over here that's getting hit with vandalism. So now what we do is when sergeants are setting up or before they go into briefing, they review the prior calls for service, and they look for those clusters. And with technology now, with mapping and GIS software and whatnot, we actually have a program that shows hot zones. So instead of just sending the deputies out there to their beats, he will make the decision to say, okay, I want 2 guys in this hot zone, I want 3 guys in this hot zone, and I want 2 guys in this hot zone. And then what's left over, we're going to put in the beat so that we don't ignore our community.
Right.
And it's working. We're catching knuckleheads.
It's good.
When we first did that, the typical reaction from deputies was, well, you just want us to show paint. Well, exactly. We want you in those areas patrolling. So it's the numbers are anecdotal because they're hard to quantify, right?
Right. And they're a moving target too.
What are we truly stopping?
Yeah.
But again, we're not seeing those increases. So
that's actually impressive, to be honest with you.
Really? Why aren't we doing it this way?
Well, I think technology has helped a lot with that.
Yeah, it has.
It really has. I mean, because now you can get real-time data versus having it being crunched before manually, and then
the county's still not that big of a county, and we know where we're getting hit and where we're not, and I don't know. We're doing it now.
But like you said, though, it does change. Areas change. They move from one area to another. So, I mean, this is the way to direct it to the proper areas. Yeah. So it's, like you said, makes sense. Why didn't we talk about it? Well, that's great. So we're doing good, folks. So welcome to El Dorado County. Thank you very much. And so I went back and looked at some of the topics. That's why I wanted to, make this wrap up for 2018. And one of the discussions, but one of the discussions we had was body cams. And that was one of the things that I thought how have you gone? You said you were going to be investigating, you were going to be thinking, you were going to be studying. Where have we gone with that for our deputies?
We just had the conversation this morning, believe it or not.
That must be clairvoyant.
At our weekly command staff meeting. To start looking at it. I don't want to say we're behind the curve. I think that we've watched the issue. We've watched policy and how it's evolved since body cams started becoming more prevalent. it seems that now the one of the driving forces behind agencies finally coming on board with body cams is staff. I just read an article, I believe it was last week, back east, some agency, their Peace Officers Association actually requested the administration and the council to get them body cams, because as like with our vehicle cams that we have in our cars, whenever a deputy has a complaint and there's vehicle footage from that, 99 times out of 100 it exonerates that deputy.
Absolutely.
So staff are actually starting to come on board with body cams. I think the policies have finally caught up with it. Some of the most important policies were that needed to be vetted out were the issue of Public Records Act requests,
right,
and the availability of that video. When we talked about that on the show,
we did.
If somebody says, "I want all the video all the time," now we're gonna have to be hiring people just to go ahead and review it to find out what we can release and we can't release on a given basis. Another issue was if you have a deputy involved in a critical incident, do you allow that deputy to review that video before they ever give a statement? My opinion is absolutely. Why wouldn't you? That's the best evidence. Why aren't you going to let them review that? Of course, the ACLU and some other organizations are saying, "Oh, no, they can't look at that before they give a statement." Well, it doesn't make any sense to me. That's been, as far as I understand, vetted out. We can, as an agency, we can use the policy that way. And then the cost. It's a significant cost to outfit an agency our size with body cams. One of the things that we have going real well for us right now, I mentioned the facility is coming in on time and under budget. One of the issues with being under budget is even in our own restricted fund balances. I've said that we've set aside some money in asset seizure and other areas, our rural crimes, rural counties money. I've set some of those monies aside for unforeseens, plus, because we know at the end of the project there's going to be, we forgot about that.
Absolutely.
We got to do this, we got to do that.
Right.
Plus other needs that we have, a mobile command post, some other things. Well, because we're coming in under budget and things are looking very well, we might be able to swing that without having to go to the board and asking for money. So those were some of the conversations we had this morning. We're going to do some more internal evaluation with staff, with the DSA, and see if maybe now is the time.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck with me in our last conversation about this had to do with the sensitivity of what the deputies do at times in talking to victims in that whole situation. And where does the body cam lie into this? I know a lot of people haven't really thought about that, but, because it's easy to see everybody's wearing a body cam. But you got to remember, deputies deal with situations many times. It's not going to become public knowledge. And there is a sensitivity to these things. And so that issue has to be addressed as far as the body cams.
Yeah, we talked about, I used the example of a rape victim. When you're sitting down interviewing a rape victim, it's one thing to have an audio recorder there when you're doing the interview. It's another thing to know, for that rape victim to know that she's now, or he is being videoed.
And they're the victim.
And they're the victims.
Right.
And since we've talked, some of the things that I've read and talked to different folks about is, in today's day and age, in today's society, we all think we're being videoed anyway.
There's an assumption of that,
and it's actually not being as sensitive of an issue as it was prior. And also the fact that we can craft policy to be able to take into account those sensitive situations and the wishes of the victim at the time.
I know initially when body cams first came out in some of the departments, one of the problems that occurred is that the officers being involved would turn off their cameras during these confidential discussions with these victims, and then either turn it back on or whatever it may be, and the questions started coming up by attorneys, unfortunately, as to why did you turn this off, what are you trying to hide, and that whole situation. So the public out there has to remember it's not a cut and dry issue. It's I've heard people say it's a dumb thing. I mean, it should be a slam dunk. Nobody should even discuss it. And I'm going, there's more to this. You got to understand the whole situation. So it's good to hear that it's all being discussed. And it's good for those of you out there listening to the show to remember that think about a little bit about this and how it may be handled, and that our sheriff has decided to really study the issue, be educated in it, and set a policy that's going to work well and yet not violate possibilities of the victims and that type of situations. So there's a lot involved in body cams, but I think we've covered that pretty well. The next thing we talked about this year was the marijuana laws and the passage of recreational marijuana in California, of course, and where El Dorado County was going to lie in that. And of course, we also talked about how do you administer a test? Let's say a deputy pulls over a driver that may be intoxicated with marijuana versus alcohol, and how do you handle that? And so what are we doing now? How is that going in El Dorado County?
So California still has not come up with a presumptive positive, or not presumptive, a legal limit.
Yeah, like alcohol.
Nobody has.
That's right.
So that's not there yet. El Dorado County just passed measures NPQRNS. Those were the measures that would have or set the regulations for cultivation, sales, distribution of medical and recreational marijuana, and also set the taxation and regulation of taxation on that. They all passed. I was very opposed to it. I got some print time. Don Hodgson wrote a very nice article with my opinion on it from a speech I gave. I was anywhere I could. I was putting out the message, please vote no on these. But they passed. And they passed by a significant margin.
They did.
65, I think, 65%.
That's pretty amazing.
So now everybody's coming to me saying, okay, Sheriff, what are you going to do? And I put it this way. I don't want to sound flippant or dismissive. But quite honestly, the answer is nothing. The county just made this a regulatory issue and a civil issue. This will now be handled by code enforcement, the tax collector. The sheriff's office will still be investigating the large-scale criminal and drug trafficking organization gardens, gangs associated with gardens, poly-drug gardens where there's also other drugs like meth and heroin involved, which is frequent, happens frequently. Illegal labs for like honey oil or things of that nature. We're still going to be doing what we do, but in regards to the recreation and medical, the commercial side of it, that the county has now made legal through regulation, that's not our job. Now, given that, given we know what's going to happen based on the experience of Colorado, Oregon, and so forth. And here's a number that just came out of the Oregon-Idaho HIDA report, the high-intensity drug trafficking area report, was of all the marijuana that is cultivated in Oregon, only 1.9% of it is falling within their legal taxation consumption laws.
So
that means the rest of it is being exported. It's going out of state. Why? Because that's where the money is. We've seen marijuana in El Dorado County fall from $4,000 a pound to less than $1,000 a pound for good bud.
Really?
In New York, they're still getting $5,000 and $6,000, $4,000, $6,000 a pound.
Okay.
So we're going to start seeing. Well, it's already happening. We know that, but it's going to increase. So in relation to that, we are going to, and I'll just use the term, we're going to cash in on that. We are going to up our interdiction efforts. We're going to be working more closely with the U.S. Postal Service, with FedEx, with the shipping agencies. We're going to be working on seizures of drugs that are leaving our county and seizures of cash that are coming into our county illegally. That's what we're going to work on our side.
It's interesting. I had no idea. Well, we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting.
Rodeo.
I had a discussion with a friend of mine who retired from EDSO after many years, and we were talking about the fact that, the alcohol, it's pretty cut and dry and straightforward and all that, but with marijuana, how are you going to deal with it on a legal side as far as you make a stop and somebody's impaired, and the field sobriety tests have to be done.
Well, if we can prove impairment, then we'll be working on those, and we're going to see those instances increase as they have in Colorado, Oregon, and whatnot. But it's the fatal. It's the wreck where somebody causes an accident and kills somebody, and we can't prove impairment. What is the level?
Right.
There is no such level.
There's no standard.
There's no standard.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I know that there's apparently a company or two out there claiming they're making field kits now, but again, without that standard.
Yeah. Presumptive positive test that somebody's under the influence of marijuana is not a beyond a reasonable doubt level of this caused this accident.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So there's more to it than it. If you don't think into all sides of an issue, there's more to it than not. But okay, it is what it is, and we'll deal with it. But keep that in mind. Unfortunately, it seems to me that we're seeing an increase in impaired driving overall in the whole state. I was looking at some of the statistics, and from what I saw when a little bit of research. I mean, it's people under the influence of not only alcohol or marijuana, but of course it's meth and heroin and everything else as well. Which
and these things
and
texting and driving.
Well, yeah. Funny sidebar on this. Yeah, there's a whole other side of this, because every new vehicle that's put out there now has this whole information center there, and it's almost like, and even in law enforcement, you got your computers sitting there, and believe it or not, I've been behind a law enforcement vehicle to watch them, because they're looking at their screens, and so it's a whole issue, not only of impairment, but of us having to learn that there are certain things that are not important while you're driving down that freeway at 70 miles an hour. That are just not that important. Let's wait, let it go. So the more the hands-free stuff works, okay, as long as you don't have to look at a screen and touch it. So that's a good deal. Our next on our list was the homeless outreach team. We talked about that a little bit. So that's still ongoing.
Okay. They're doing fantastic work. I think they've housed nearly 100 folks now. They're doing a lot of good work in the community. If you have a homeless issue in your area or of an area, please reach out to our hot unit. Right. Give us a call. If it looks like nothing's being done, I assure you that's not the case. They just, in order for them to be effective, they're not just working on the total enforcement side of the homeless issue. The best thing they can do we've had these conversations. There's three kinds of homeless. There's those that are homeless by no fault of their own.
Right.
They just fell on hard times. Man, we can do so much for them.
Right.
There's the mentally ill.
Right.
We can do a lot for them. Those that are antisocial, criminal behavior, whatever, they want to be homeless. They don't want any help. They don't want any. Well, those are the ones that we work the total enforcement on and work on them, and eventually they leave.
Right.
But a perfect example was in the newspaper a few months ago or a month ago. There was an article about Caltrans working under the Weber Creek Bridge on Highway 50,
right,
between Forney Road or Placerville Drive and Missouri Flat Road.
Right.
And they got a lot of kudos for going in there and just running them out and cleaning them up.
Right.
But here's the problem. If you go in there and just run them out and clean them up, what are you doing to the problem? You're just moving it over here. And you move it over here. And then you do that, you move it over here.
Around. Yeah.
So our hot unit was actively working with some of them, had some plans with some of them. Unfortunately, that kind of backed things up for a while, but it's okay. Work with the hot unit. They have a lot of things that they can do with the homeless. That's the right thing to do, rather than just going in and
knocking them out, cleaning up the area.
Yeah.
They'll move back in anyway.
And then they move back exactly. And that's what they saw over there.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. It's cleaned up. Hey, it's nice. We'll move back over here and we'll do it again. It's a societal issue, to be honest with you, on the homeless line, and there's not an easy answer to it. But you touched on something that's a hot button for me, and it's the mental health issue that is involved with that, and your PERT team,
yes.
which for those
yes.
who don't know, that's a psychiatric emergency response team that
right.
you have. Would you talk about that for a moment? How that helps?
So our PERT, and we were able to do this through a grant that was obtained through HHSA, Health and Human Services Agency,
mm-hmm.
and it allowed us to pair up a deputy with a licensed clinical psychologist.
Right.
I believe that's the correct term.
I believe that's right. Yeah.
So we received many calls for not only in the homeless community, but also calls of service for attempt suicide,
mm-hmm.
Anger, just lashing out, violent issues, and that have their root base in mental health issues. Right. This team is able to go out and, with the deputy and the psychologist, are able to free up our deputies from spending hours on one issue.
Right.
They're able to, the psychologist is able to do evaluations in the field, mm-hmm. Which takes the burden off the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Is able to do. They come up with plans, mental health plans for these folks. They can help them get into different treatment programs. They can help them get into different, like the one, different places to go.
Right. Getting them the services that they need by somebody that's in the field and knows what's going on. Yeah. And it's a time savings throughout the whole system, as well as a financial savings.
Exactly.
As well as helping the individuals.
And then beyond that, if they're not on a call for service or relieving a deputy or somebody on a call for service, then they're out doing follow-up. Right. And they're visiting these folks and making sure that they're programming, making sure
things
that they're
working.
Doing, things are absolutely.
That's right.
And it is also very, very, very successful. We hear it from the hospital. We hear it from our deputies. We hear it from the consumers themselves. And as far as the homeless outreach team and them working with them, that has also been.
It's a hand-in-hand effort. Yeah. Absolutely. So again, kudos to you and your team for that and coming up with that, because that's a major issue, and we know how bad the issue also is with our veterans and the mental health issue, and they're starting to really address that issue as well. So it's one that's going to be ongoing, and we'll probably keep talking into 2019 as well, and for a long time about it. But I think it's getting better, so I'm glad to hear that. We're getting down to the end of the list. One of the things we talked about in this year in 2018 had to do with the video sharing because we talked about many of us have cameras around our properties or our homes or whatever that actually are available online that you can go and have a look. And one of the things that the Sheriff's Department and the Sheriff talked about was possibly sharing some of those feeds and going in. And is that progressing? Have people been doing that, or are we getting some resistance?
We're actually on hold right now.
Okay.
Our IT division and dispatch and everything else is kind of overwhelmed right now with planning ahead for coming into the new facility
right.
with the systems that we're going to have there and getting those online and the racking and the consoles and all that.
That's right.
We've actually kind of backed off on that for a while. We will be revisiting it because it is part of what the plans are moving into the new building for the storage capacities and the technology that we're going to have in the new facility. So it's still out there. It's one of those things that we are going to do. But right now it's on hold.
You know, when you brought it up, I thought that was a very progressive stance to take. That's something that, you know, there's a lot involved with it, and not only on the technical side of it, but also on the social side of it, and people wanting to share. Do I want to share this video with you or not? And it's an interesting conversation to have. But as we talked about, CCTV is everywhere in many things, and one of the nice things is if this comes into place and it's not abused, and that's, of course, that's. People worry about that.
Absolutely.
You know?
Privacy issues, absolutely.
It's a big one. So, good. We'll put that on the burner for 2019. We'll see what happens on that. And as we're rolling into Christmas, it's always something that I want everybody to be aware of. If you've ever been a victim during Christmas time of shopping theft or wherever it may be, I'd like the sheriff just to talk a moment or two about how do you keep yourself safe when shopping? What are your suggestions, and how should people handle their shopping, particularly with the time change issue now that things get dark so early? What's your suggestion, and how should people handle it?
Well, every year, you know, right now we're on a big Lock It Up campaign. On our social media, you'll see some of our feeds on Facebook about Lock It Up. Vehicle thefts is still vehicle theft from a vehicle.
Products in the vehicle.
It's huge. It takes. We were doing they were shooting a video and they timed it. It was like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Just walking through a parking lot, flipping door handles, looking around, making sure nobody's watching, flipping, find doors open. Stuff in the car in plain view. Lock your cars when you're shopping, when you're out shopping. Don't have anything in plain view in your cars. Put your stuff in your trunk or cover it up, something. Don't give them an opportunity. Criminals are opportunistic. They're looking for the opportunity. Don't give them the opportunity. Ladies, when you're in shopping, keep your purse on your arm or tether it to you. Have a little clip and clip it to your shopping cart or something. But don't just set it in your shopping cart and turn away.
Nope.
We see that.
Yeah.
Right now, it's the time of year we're also seeing a lot of package thefts, porch thefts.
Right.
Where everybody's buying stuff on Amazon and
whatever, the online shopping may be, everybody's things getting delivered.
Having it delivered, and we have, you know, a lot of people now, they have this Ring and they have their video.
I do.
And we have it on video. We have it on video, and we can solve some of these cases because maybe we got a license plate or whatever, but you still got your stuff stolen.
Yeah.
Just a lot of it's common sense.
Making sense.
If you're going to be out of the house, turn your lights off on your Christmas trees and any of your decorations inside your house. Don't give the knuckleheads, if they're driving by and they can see a Christmas tree, they know it's going to be covered with presents underneath of it. Right.
It's a safety thing too. Yeah, absolutely. Common sense plays a lot. My wife and I were a victim of this about 20 some years ago, believe it or not. And she had done some shopping at a mall and dropped off some packages, gone to another store. Between the time she went to this other store and came back, they broke a window, broke into the car, and stole all the Christmas gifts that she just bought. And so it's been an ongoing problem for a long time. And believe it or not, also be aware that it happens in daytime as well as night. Oh, yeah. It can happen. I mean, you know, these parking lots at the malls are jammed, and not everybody's watching, and it's very easy to break a car window. People think it's difficult. It's not. It's very easy. And the sheriff's right. Keep your stuff maybe out of sight if you can. I know that all of us that basically drive SUV-style cars now, it's a bit of a problem. You can cover it up, but they can see it's a cover-up, so they might think there's something there. So, and on the purse issue, in my training that I do for my students, all that, women, even guys, one of the things I always suggest is that you carry a purse that's over-the-shoulder style, so that it cannot be grabbed away from you. You know, your little handle when you're walking around, that can be so easily grabbed and taken away. So, you know, take a little bit of responsibility as well as yourself. Be aware of your surroundings, of what's going on. If something doesn't look right, Don't walk yourself into that situation. Walk yourself out of that situation. Yep. Mall security or store security is always there if you have a question. Sometimes there's pockets in a parking lot that are not as well lit. Be aware of where you've parked. Know where you've parked, and hopefully, if it's going to become into a nighttime situation, you stay into a lit area, and also you stay around people. That's the other thing. Don't be isolated as well. So many things for you to think about during the season, but we wish you a very safe, wonderful holiday. Sheriff DeAugustini, I want to thank you very much for another wonderful year here with Crime Beat and Old Guy Tech TV and all of that. We're going to be moving on to a new formula that you may see on this. We're going to go more to a podcast, which is going to be easier for you to listen to our shows going on. You'll be able to listen to it on your phone, on your computer, on your TV, whatever it may be. So we're hoping to get this information out to you because we do this for you. And that's why the sheriff spends the time talking to us, and we go through all these issues about what's going on in public safety in El Dorado County. And I think it's a unique opportunity that you have as citizens watching us and listening to the sheriff actually talk about what's going on and how he feels, because too many times it seems to be a lag between law enforcement and the public, and people are a little standoffish and worried. And our sheriff has been so progressive in making sure that the deputies are friendly and nice. You can wave at a deputy and not worry about, okay, this guy just waved or flipped me off, I'm going to get pulled over. It doesn't happen in our county. They're all there to help you. And thank you again very much. And have a wonderful end of 2019. 2018. We're going to look forward to 2019 and continuing the shows on. And for all of you out there, from all of us, have a wonderful holiday and Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah to many of you as well. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.